A couple of days ago, I saw this gentleman wearing a t shirt that had a slogan on it, and it said, "Wisdom is the pursuit of knowledge." And although I respected the nod to intellectualism, I actually found myself disagreeing and wanting to add wisdom is the correct application of knowledge. You could even say pursued knowledge. When we collect knowledge for the sake of knowledge, I find that it creates its own sort of ineptitude. And perhaps it's because I come from briefly an academic background. And at one point, I valued the accumulation of knowledge and was very much in the egoic mindset that
Tamam,
the
şu an
more
gözükmüyor.
one knew, the smarter they were. And I came to realize that, quite simply, this was not true. That there are bodies of works and niches that people can specialize in. But that doesn't mean that they are more intelligent per se, especially if they are just a collection of books and quotes, movie lines, and facts and data. And without the preservation of experience and understanding how to apply those facts and the knowledge and the quotes and the books and the theorems, it's just a container. You become a walking container. Now that we have the advent of AI, even the pursuit of knowledge, I think, is going to be rapidly declining because there's no need to store and amass such quantities of data in the human brain. And we see the offloading of this onto computers and search engines. And I believe that this is just going to continue. I'm not even sure why at some point in the future we will need to have doctors in the same way that we've had them before. Where doctors accumulate a body of knowledge. This is what they are exceptional at. And medical doctors, this is, although the same could be said for scientist doctors. And what they do is they correctly apply the knowledge. And this is what differentiates good doctors from bad doctors, because you can go to med school and practically fail but pass and go out and be the worst surgeon out there because you don't know how to apply the knowledge that you've learned and you've acquired just the minimum, or you don't know how to apply it at all, and perhaps you did exceptional at your board exams, but probably not because it's all applied knowledge anyway when you get to that level. And so as a result, this is a differentiating factor of, and I don't want to say intelligence because it's not about intelligence, but it's about, in my opinion, wisdom. Because you can go to school and you can learn a lot of things, but if you walk out and you don't know how to do anything with it, then what good does it serve anybody? Really? And when we use the measuring stick of how much somebody knows or how many books they've read or podcasts that they've listened to, or do they drop the right names, we're actually missing an opportunity to see underneath the surface. Because you can retain a lot of random data. And if your life is still a mess and you're not learning from your karmic cycles and your relationships are struggling, if not outright failing, persistently over time because of the choices that you're making. And you preferentially laud people who amass a lot of random information, but they don't necessarily know what to do with it. And there's not a lot of time introspecting and learning implicitly from what it means to be operating in the day-to-day world in an interrelational dynamic. Then going back to that quote, wisdom as the pursuit of knowledge is just ridiculous, in my opinion. Wisdom as the pursuit of knowledge, just acquiring information, does not make a wise person. Lately, when I've been talking to ChatGPT, I've actually been asking for a second opinion from my doctors because there are a couple things that stood out to me when I was doing my own research. And ChatGPT, in my personal opinion, did a much better job. It's like out of 5 times, ChatGPT correctly assessed the situation. And this particular doctor in question had a great reputation, and I think that they are very, very good at what they do. But there were some caveats that concerned me. And so I started double checking. And this particular doctor ordered a round of tests that actually were not necessary at all. And it wasn't a big deal. It's a small expense and just a little bit of time and a little bit of blood. But I don't think that the doctor has the time in their day to reflect that deeply of whether or not that test was necessary. And so, as a precautionary measure, they did the right thing to rule out the impossible and improbable. But when you did an in-depth review of what they were looking for, you would see that actually it was not possible. And you could logically determine this without the test. But I went ahead and pursued anyway the test, due diligence and all, and indeed I came back negative. ChatGPT very quickly surmised that going down this route was completely unnecessary for X, Y, and Z reasons. ChatGPT also, I find, is very adept at understanding probabilities. And so this is where I feel that humans don't do as good of a job, particularly when we are in heightened states of vigilance or being triggered or if we're like too close to a situation. And so if we're worried about something with our own health, then we have a very difficult time evaluating the risk and the probabilities of something because we get blinded by the fear that we're experiencing and the stress. And so having somebody that's impartial, like a doctor, you go to a specialist, an expert, or an AI, is the best way to evaluate risk. But what happens when our doctors, who are the best of the best of the best, world's leading experts, specialists, what happens when even they don't do as good of a job as ChatGPT in evaluating risks and probabilities? Leaving me to believe that perhaps humans are going to be falling behind very soon. And even doctors' jobs are not going to be safe at some point. But I digress. It is the application of wisdom which differentiates, the application of knowledge, which differentiates a wise being from an inept being, from an inefficient being, from a being that is the authority that still gets it wrong. When we live in a world that demands precision and accuracy, knowledge is useless unless it is actually applied correctly. And in our personal lives, when we find ourselves repeating lessons over and over and over again, it really raises the question, in my personal opinion, of whether or not we really are the dominant species. I think about this a lot because I see so many beautiful aspects of humanity and also so many flaws, so many cognitive biases and cognitive errors, and the repeating of problems in our personal lives and the inability to actually harmonize with other humans a lot of the time raises this question of, I know that we're pro-social species and we do harmonize with select groups. And we form these cliques, and it's this whole culture and subculture and in-group and out-group and us versus them and right versus left and Republican versus Democrat and bombing other parts of the world and enslaving groups of people endlessly. It just never ends. Like, how many cycles do we have to do this? We literally started this country, depending on where you're at, I'm referencing the United States of America, to break away from oppressors. Only to what? Find ourselves oppressing all over again? It's just madness. Like, how many times do we have to go around in these circles before we finally figure it out? This is why the pursuit of knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge in the absence of correct application and precise awareness of how to break cycles of bondage and repetitious flailing as a species. Not only that, the probability that we are going to upend ourselves or the planet or another group of humans or destroy another dimension is relatively high, in my opinion. I recently read a book. It was really heavy. I might get banned even just talking about it. It was really intense, called A Quest for Love. And it is about, let me see if I can speak in code, because YouTube does not like topics like this. It's about a young person who in the 70s was sold off by their family to become an elite servicer of lewd acts. And she was very young when this happened. And the memories that she goes through are really intense. I don't recommend it if you're not prepared to be just shocked. Perhaps not shocked. It's like the darkest parts of humanity. There's unaliving in there of other young people. There's torture, sadism, humiliation, starvation. Talk about oppression. And this is from somebody's mother, as well as other perpetrators, of course. And I asked ChatGPT why they believed humans could do this to each other. And they laid out this argument that I found very compelling. And I'm not going to go into it here, it's not very important, but essentially that the probability that we are caught in these cycles with an oppressor, an elite group that is too set off from the mainstream, too disconnected, who write their own rules, who don't have accountability, like almost as though the very nature of humanity is to be depraved and to victimize our own children. So we are the species that does this to each other, to ourselves, to our offspring. It's like we're reptiles eating our young. And we're supposed to be mammals. And so when we think about what it means to be human and what it means to have wisdom and to be an evolving human, I believe that intelligence is marked by adaptability, and wisdom is the application of hard-earned knowledge sometimes. Sometimes it's lessons. Sometimes it's being confronted with ugly truths that we didn't want to believe in. Sometimes it is reading a book, grasping it, and then practically applying it in our everyday. But if we are actually trying to ascend and evolve beyond where we've ever been before, then it requires an elevation in our ability to understand ourselves from the inside out and how we are collectively creating reality together. Because if we're caught in these loops and these cycles of oppression and slavery and domination, and then, okay, so we've advanced far into the future, past the Industrial Revolution, into the technology age, now into AI. And we're going to use these sophisticated means for what? To just do it all over again? Are you kidding me? Like, have we learned? Are we intelligent? At least as intelligent that we believe that we are? I find that wisdom itself is even not enough. That it requires a relentless dedication to improvement and iterative steps in evolution, not just treading water, falling into stagnation, but actually applying towards something better, not only at the individual level, but also at the collective level. And I would argue at the intergalactic level an interdimensional level, almost as though our perspective of where our impact actually ripples out to needs to expand. Because there's something so short sighted as to not believe that we are impacting future timelines, present timelines, past timelines, across a multitude of dimensions, potentially. But imagine for a moment just being locked into the perspective that even how you treat your child doesn't matter. How you treat your neighbor doesn't matter. How you treat people in other countries doesn't matter.